The morning after the incident, the city woke up to chaos. Every TV channel, every online blog, every gossip site screamed the same headline in bold red letters: "Waitress rejects billionaire marriage offer in front of everyone." Clips from the cafe played again and again. Adrian Blake, one of the richest men in New York, standing with his usual calm expression, and Lena Carter, the unknown waitress who said no to him without hesitation. The video had over 20 million views in a single night. People called her brave. Others called her foolish. But no one could stop talking about her. That morning, Lena couldn't even leave her apartment without facing reporters at her doorstep. Flashlights hit her face as she tried to walk out quietly for work. She kept her head low, clutching her jacket tighter against the cold wind. "Miss Carter, why did you reject him? Are you secretly married? Did you know who he was before he asked you?" She said nothing. Her silence only made them shout louder. When she finally reached the cafe, her manager pulled her aside with a nervous smile. "Lena, I think you should take some time off," he whispered, avoiding her eyes. She nodded slowly. She knew it wasn't his fault. No one wanted reporters swarming outside the cafe. As she walked home again, her phone buzzed non-stop. Unknown numbers, interview requests, even hate messages. The world had turned her life into entertainment overnight. She switched the phone off and stood still for a moment in the middle of the street, staring up at the grey sky. "I just said no," she murmured to herself. Why does the world care? Back in his penthouse, Adrian Blake sat in silence as his PR team talked over each other. "Sir, we can spin this story. Say it was a marketing stunt. Maybe for your new charity, or we release a statement that you respect her decision." Adrian didn't respond. He stared out the glass wall, the city stretching far below him. His reflection in the window looked cold, almost unfamiliar. He'd been humiliated before investors, the public, the internet, by a woman he barely knew, but what burned inside him wasn't anger. It was confusion. He replayed that moment again in his head, the way she looked at him calm and fearless, as if she already knew everything about him and didn't like what she saw. No hesitation. No awe, just quiet rejection. "Everyone says yes," he muttered under his breath. "Everyone." Hours later, he told his assistant Ryan, "Find out everything about her. I want to know who she is, where she comes from, who her family is, everything." Ryan looked surprised. "Sir, are you sure?" "The press, do it," Adrian said flatly. "I don't want a public story. I want the truth." That night, Lena sat beside her younger brother Eli in their tiny apartment. The walls were cracked, and the heater made a soft buzzing sound. Eli was 16 but looked younger, thin from years of sickness. He smiled weakly when she placed a bowl of soup beside him. "You're on the news again," he said with a small laugh. "You're famous, Lena." She smiled faintly. "I don't want to be." "Why'd you say no to him?" he asked quietly. "You could have changed our lives." She looked at him for a long time. "Because I don't trust people who think they can buy everything," she whispered. Eli lowered his eyes, stirring the soup. He knew there was more to her words, but he didn't ask. Meanwhile, in his office, Adrian received the report from Ryan. Her name's Lena Carter, 24, works at a cafe in Brooklyn. Lives with her younger brother. Parents both deceased. Father used to work in a small-town factory called Millstone Textiles before it shut down 15 years ago. Adrian frowned. "Millstone?" Ryan nodded. "It was closed after your father's company bought the land for a new project. The workers never got proper compensation. Most of them lost everything." For a moment, Adrian didn't move. The room went quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. "My father's company," he whispered. "We caused that?" Ryan hesitated. "It seems so. The project failed later, but by then the damage was done. Her father, Thomas Carter, died 2 years after losing his job. Heart failure." Adrian's hands tightened around the file. The image of Lena's cold eyes came back to him. Suddenly her rejection made sense. She didn't reject him. She rejected everything he represented. Later that night, Adrian sat alone in his study, staring at an old photo of his father on the desk. A proud man with a confident smile. He remembered the speeches his father gave about success, control, and dominance. "Never let anyone make you feel guilty for winning," his father used to say. But now, those words felt hollow. He picked up the report again and saw a small picture of Lena as a child with her parents, standing in front of a factory building with faded paint, smiling despite their worn clothes. He stared at it for a long time. For the first time in his life, Adrian Blake didn't feel powerful. He felt responsible. In the darkness of her apartment, Lena sat beside the window, looking at the city lights. She didn't know that somewhere across the skyline, the man she had rejected was staring at her photo. Not out of pride anymore, but guilt, she whispered to herself. They took everything from us, Dad, but I won't let them buy my heart too. The next morning, Adrian walked into his company's archives. Dusty folders, old records, forgotten signatures, the ghosts of decisions made long ago. He searched for the millstone file and found it, sealed and yellow with age. Inside were letters from workers who had begged for help when the factory was closing. Unanswered letters. One of them had a signature at the bottom, Thomas Carter. Adrian closed his eyes. So this is why, he said softly. This is why she looked at me like that. He stood there for a long time, holding the letter in his hand, a silent promise forming inside him. If money once destroyed her family, maybe now it could fix what was broken, but deep down, he knew this wasn't about business anymore. It was about forgiveness, something he had never learned how to earn. And as the city outside buzzed with gossip and laughter, Adrian Blake began to plan something that would change both their lives forever. Something no one, not even Lena, could see coming. Days turned into weeks, but the story of the waitress who rejected the billionaire refused to die. Everywhere Adrian Blake went, people whispered behind his back. In meetings, investors avoided eye contact. On social media, his face had become a meme. The billionaire who got a no. His pride was bruised, but his heart was strangely restless. For the first time in his life, he couldn't move on from something he couldn't control. He tried to bury himself in work, but the image of Lena's calm, fearless eyes wouldn't leave him. He kept hearing her voice, "You think money can fix everything." It echoed in his mind like a truth he didn't want to face. Late one night, Adrian sat in his office, looking over the old factory files again. He saw the letters from the workers, the desperate pleas, the lost hope. His father's company had ignored them all. He whispered under his breath, "You suffered because of my name." Something inside him shifted that night. For the first time, he didn't want revenge. He wanted to understand. The next morning, Adrian made a call. "Ryan," he said to his assistant, "I need you to find the best doctor in the city. There's a boy, Eli Carter. He's been sick for years. Make sure he gets treatment, but don't tell anyone it's from me." Ryan hesitated. "Sir, if she finds out—" "She won't," Adrian cut in. "This isn't charity. It's a debt." Meanwhile, Lena was having one of her hardest weeks. She had lost her job at the cafe, not because she did anything wrong, but because the owner couldn't handle the media attention. Bills were piling up, and Eli's health was getting worse. The hospital called her that morning. "Miss Carter, there's a new program covering your brother's treatment. You don't need to pay for now," Lena froze. "What program?" The nurse smiled. "Some anonymous donor." "You're lucky." She hung up, confused. "Anonymous donor? Who would do that for her?" She pushed the thought aside. For once, things were getting better, and that was enough. A few days later, the cafe bell jingled again. Lena looked up and froze. Adrian Blake stood at the door. No bodyguards, no cameras. Just him in a plain black coat, holding a coffee cup from another shop. The manager nearly dropped his tray. The other customers stared. Adrian walked straight to the counter. "One black coffee, please," he said calmly. Lena's hands trembled as she poured it. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "Why not?" he asked. "It's a public place." Her eyes met his. "You already took enough of my peace." "What more do you want?" He paused. "The conversation." "We have nothing to talk about." Adrian looked down for a moment. "Maybe, but you were right that day. I thought money could fix anything." "I was wrong." Lena frowned, uncertain whether to believe him. He placed some bills on the counter, more than enough for the coffee. "Keep the change," he said quietly, then added, "Not as a tip, but as an apology." Before she could respond, he walked out into the rain. From that day on, Adrian started visiting the cafe more often. Sometimes he'd just sit in a corner reading. Other times he'd watch the world around him. People working hard for small dreams. He started noticing things he'd never seen before. The way an old man smiled at his wife over tea. The way a child counted coins to buy a cookie. It was simple, real, and something he'd been missing his whole life. One evening, as the cafe was closing, Lena found him still sitting there. The rain outside was heavy, and thunder rumbled in the distance. "You're still here?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "You make the best coffee in the city." She rolled her eyes. The morning sun crept through the tall windows of Adrian Blake's penthouse, but he barely noticed. He hadn't slept. The events of the last few weeks had twisted something inside him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about money, deals, or power. He was thinking about a girl who hated him for all the right reasons. On his desk sat the folder marked Millstone Textiles. He had gone through every page, every signature, every old memo his father had written. The truth was heavy, and it didn't let him breathe. He picked up his phone and called Ryan, his assistant. "Find me everything you can about the Millstone case," Adrian said. Ryan hesitated. "Sir, we already did. The factory was closed legally. There were protests, yes, but your father's name was cleared." Adrian's voice hardened. "That's not what I asked. I want the truth, not what the lawyers wrote." Ryan knew better than to argue. Meanwhile, across the city, Lena was walking back from the hospital. Eli's health had started to improve. His doctors were hopeful. She smiled for the first time in weeks, but the mystery of the anonymous donor haunted her. She had asked the nurse again that morning, and the answer was the same, no name given. Her heart told her it was Adrian. Her pride hoped it wasn't. At the corner of the street, she stopped to buy some flowers, a habit her father had taught her. "Fresh flowers keep the soul soft," he used to say. As she walked home with the bouquet, she thought of him, his laughter, his tired eyes after the factory shut down, the way he still smiled through everything. A tear escaped before she could stop it. That evening, Adrian drove alone to a small town 2 hours away from New York. The GPS said Millstone. It was nothing like the city. Quiet streets, old houses, empty shops. Time seemed to have forgotten this place. He parked near the ruins of what used to be the Millstone factory. The walls were broken, the roof gone, the paint faded. He stepped out of the car, his expensive shoes sinking slightly into the dirt. A few locals watched from a distance, whispering. Everyone recognized him. The billionaire who once owned everything, now standing among ruins his family left behind. An old man walked up to him slowly. "You're a Blake, aren't you?" Adrian nodded. "Yes," the man's eyes narrowed. "Your father promised to bring us jobs. Instead, he brought us nothing but lies." Adrian looked down. "I know," he said softly. "That's why I'm here." "To fix what he broke," the old man scoffed. "You can't fix ghosts, son. They stay." And with that, he walked away, leaving Adrian alone among the dust and silence. That night, Adrian checked into a small motel nearby. He couldn't sleep. The sound of wind passing through the broken factory echoed in his head. Around midnight, Ryan called. "Sir, I found something. There's an old video file from 15 years ago. A recording of the Millstone board meeting. You might want to see this." Adrian opened his laptop and played it. The screen flickered, showing a younger version of his father sitting at the head of a table. "Gentlemen," his father said, "the land deal is complete. The workers will be compensated according to contract. We move forward." A man on the other side protested. "But sir, the workers have families. The deal gives them almost nothing." Adrian's father cut him off sharply. "Business isn't charity, Wilson. They'll survive." The video ended abruptly. Adrian sat there for a long time, frozen. His father's voice, once his greatest inspiration, now sounded cold and cruel. He finally understood. His entire empire had been built on decisions like that. Decisions that destroyed lives like Lena's. The next day, Adrian went back to the city. The drive felt longer than before. When he reached home, he took the elevator straight to his study and opened a small safe. Inside were his father's journals, books he had never dared to read. He flipped through the pages until one sentence stopped him. "Sometimes to win, we must break a few. They'll hate me now, but one day they'll understand power." Adrian shut the book, disgusted. His father had never cared about understanding, only control. He picked up the phone and called his legal advisor. "Prepare documents to release funds for rebuilding the Millstone factory," he said. Under what name, sir? Adrian paused. Not mine. Call it Carter Industries. The advisor was silent for a moment. As in, Lena Carter? Yes, Adrian said quietly. And make sure no one knows I'm behind it. While Adrian was setting his plans in motion, Lena received a call from a lawyer she didn't know. Miss Carter, I'm contacting you regarding an inheritance, the man said. Lena blinked. Inheritance? From who? The details will be revealed once you sign the acknowledgement form. Please come to our office tomorrow. She spent the entire night thinking about it. Who would leave her anything? Her father had died broke. Her mother, too. No relatives left, Eli joked. Maybe it's your billionaire admirer again. Lena shot him a glare. He's not my admirer. Then why does he keep showing up in your life? She didn't answer. The next day, Lena walked into the lawyer's office, nervous. He handed her a document with a strange line written across it. This property is gifted in memory of Thomas Carter, a man who believed in honest work. Lena froze. Her father's name. The lawyer smiled politely. A foundation is being created in your father's name. A factory rebuilt from the ground up. You'll be its honorary owner. She couldn't breathe for a second. Who's doing this? I'm not allowed to say, the lawyer replied. The donor wants to remain anonymous. Her hands shook as she read the papers again. Anonymous, but she knew. Deep inside, she knew. That night, Lena walked to the cafe where she used to work. It was empty, closed for the night. She stood there by the window, staring at the reflection of herself. The same waitress, but somehow different. A soft voice behind her said, You found out, didn't you? She turned. Adrian stood there in the shadows, rain dripping from his coat. Why? She asked, her voice trembling. Why are you doing this? He took a step closer. Because my family took something from yours and I'm giving it back. You think this will erase what happened? No, he said softly. But maybe it's a start. She looked into his eyes when for the first time there was no arrogance, no pride, just guilt and quiet pain. I don't want your money, she said. I just want the truth, he nodded slowly. Then I'll tell you everything. Outside, thunder rolled again. Inside that quiet cafe, two lives that had collided by accident were now tied by a secret that went deeper than either of them knew. And as Adrian began to speak, Lena braced herself for the truth that could change everything she thought she knew about him, her father, and the past that refused to stay buried. Rain poured outside, beating against the glass as if the city itself wanted to listen. Inside the quiet cafe, Adrian stood across from Lena, a man who once ruled the skyline, now trembling like a boy about to confess something shameful. Lena's arms were crossed, her eyes steady but guarded. Start talking, she said. Adrian took a slow breath. My father's company destroyed your father's life. I didn't know at the time, but I know now. The millstone factory, the layoffs, the unpaid wages, all of it happened under his name. Under mine. Lena said nothing. He continued. I've seen the letters your father wrote before he died. He begged for help. No one answered him. That's on me. That's why I rebuilt the factory, in his name. It's not charity, it's something I should have done a long time ago. The rain outside grew heavier. Lena finally spoke, her voice low but sharp. You think building a factory erases everything? You think guilt turns into love when you throw money at it? Adrian's face fell. It's not guilt, he said quietly. It's respect. Respect? She repeated, almost laughing. Respect is what you give to someone when they're alive, not after your father's empire crushes them. He stepped closer, his voice breaking. Then tell me what to do. How do I make it right? Her eyes glistened, not with softness but pain. You can't, she whispered. Some things you can't fix, not with money, not with good intentions. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Your father deserved better. I can't undo his pain, Lena, but I can honor his name. Please, let me do that. She looked back at him, the rain light from the street lamps glowing on her wet cheeks. I didn't ask for a gift, she said. I wanted the truth. And now that I have it, I want nothing else. Then she walked out into the storm, leaving Adrian standing alone in the flickering lights of the empty cafe. The next morning, Lena woke to her brother's voice calling from the kitchen. Lena, look at this! She rushed in to find Eli holding a newspaper, his face full of disbelief. The headline read, Carter Industries opens in Millstone, rebuilding hope. Below the title was a picture of the new factory, modern and bright, with her father's name carved in stone near the gate. Lena froze. She didn't know whether to cry or scream. "It's beautiful," Eli said softly. Dad would have been proud. She touched the photo, tears welling in her eyes. "He would have hated this," she said. "He never wanted pity," Eli frowned. "You really think that's what this is? Maybe this is his way of saying sorry. Maybe he's trying to be different." Lena turned away. "People like him don't change, Eli. They just hide behind good deeds." But her voice shook. She didn't sound sure anymore. Across town, Adrian stood on the construction site of the new factory. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire today, just jeans, boots, and a jacket stained with dust. Workers moved around him, fixing the walls and planting trees. The sign Carter Industries gleamed under the morning sun. Ryan walked up behind him. The next few weeks moved like a storm through Adrian Blake's life. The world that once bowed before him had turned its back. Every major news outlet began questioning him. Why is the billionaire pouring millions into a random factory? Is this another PR trick? Has Adrian Blake lost his mind? His board members demanded answers. Investors grew restless. Shares of Blake Enterprises started to fall. At first, Adrian ignored them. He thought it would all pass. But it didn't. The media wanted a scandal, and they found one. A leaked photo of him standing beside Lena at the new factory site. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire risking empire for a waitress?" "Love or guilt, Adrian Blake's obsession exposed." The story spread like wildfire. Within days, his company's value dropped by billions. Adrian's office, once full of praise and admiration, turned cold. His board members, people who had once toasted him at expensive dinners, now avoided his calls. During a meeting, one of them, a sharp man named Collins, spoke bluntly. "You've become a liability, Adrian. The company's reputation is collapsing because of your personal choices." Adrian stared at him. "I made one decision, to rebuild what we destroyed." "That's not a mistake." Collins leaned forward. "It's not your job to play saint. It's your job to make profit." The room fell silent. Adrian looked around at the faces, all of them loyal to money, none to conscience. "Then maybe I don't belong here anymore," he said quietly. He stood up, signed the resignation papers on the table, and walked out. No one stopped him. That night, Adrian stood alone in his penthouse. The lights of the city blinked far below, but inside, everything felt dark. He walked through the halls of his home. The art, the glass, the luxury that once made him feel powerful, now felt empty, meaningless. He poured himself a glass of water and stared at his reflection in the window. His father's words echoed in his head. "Power is everything. Lose it and you're nothing," Adrian whispered to himself. "Then maybe I'm finally nothing." He left the glass half full and walked out. Meanwhile, Lena had no idea what was happening to him. She was busy reopening the new factory, now fully functional. People from her old town came to work there. The same families who had lost everything 15 years ago. Everywhere she went, people thanked her. They called her brave, kind, even inspirational. But the truth was, she didn't feel any of those things. She hadn't seen Adrian since that rainy night. He had vanished, no calls, no letters, nothing. Part of her was relieved. The other part, the one she refused to listen to, missed him. One evening, as she was locking up the factory, Ryan appeared. He looked different, tired, uncertain. "Miss Carter," he said. "I'm Adrian's former assistant." "I thought you should know." "He's gone," Lena frowned. "Gone? What do you mean?" "He resigned. Gave up everything. His company, his fortune, his properties. He sold them off quietly over the past few days. No one knows where he went." Lena's heart sank. "Why would he do that?" Ryan hesitated. "He said he wanted to start over. Somewhere no one knew his name." She looked away, gripping the keys tightly. "He doesn't owe me anything." Ryan nodded softly. "No, but maybe he thought he did." Then he handed her an envelope. "He asked me to give you this if I ever saw you again." When Ryan left, Lena stood alone under the fading light. The wind rustled through the trees as she slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Lena, they say a man becomes who his father was. Maybe that's true. But I've spent my life trying to prove I'm different, only to realize I never really lived at all. You showed me what real strength looks like, not the kind built with money, but the kind that stands with nothing and still refuses to bow. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect to be remembered. I just want to know that somewhere out there, your life is better because of what I finally chose to do right. Take care of your brother. And if you ever walk by the sea, think of me. I'll be there somewhere, starting again. Adrian read the letter again and again, until the ink blurred with her tears. She sat down on the cold steps of the factory, clutching it to her chest. The man she had hated, then pitied, and maybe, just maybe, had started to care for was gone. The wind blew softly, carrying the faint smell of rain. Eli found her there an hour later. "What happened?" he asked gently. She wiped her tears. "He left everything behind." Eli frowned. "Why does that sound like something Dad would have done?" Lena smiled faintly through her tears. "Because maybe he finally learned from him." Months passed. The world moved on. Blake Enterprises was taken over by new hands. The tabloids found new scandals, but every now and then people still whispered about the billionaire who disappeared after giving away his empire. Some said he ran away to Europe. Others claimed he lost his mind. No one really knew, but Lena knew one thing. Adrian Blake had finally become free. One cold morning, she walked to the coast. The air smelled of salt and memories. She stood by the water, the wind pulling at her hair, and took out his letter again. "If you ever walk by the sea, think of me," she smiled sadly. "I do, Adrian, I do." Then she folded the letter, pressed it to her heart, and let the wind carry it away. Far from the city, in a small fishing town miles away, a man sat by the docks wearing simple clothes. His hands were rough now, his hair longer, his eyes softer. A local boy ran up to him. "Mr. A, someone's asking for you at the post office." He smiled faintly. "Tell them I'll be there soon." As the boy ran off, Adrian Blake, or what was left of him, looked out at the wide blue sea. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Maybe losing everything was the only way to find myself." And somewhere in that same moment, back in the city, Lena looked out the window of the new Carter factory, her heart strangely peaceful. Two lives, once torn apart by power and pain, now stood on different sides of the world, both finally learning that love doesn't always need an ending. Sometimes, it just needs silence, forgiveness, and time. It had been almost a year since Adrian vanished. The world had stopped talking about him. New billionaires rose, new scandals filled the news. For most people, Adrian Blake had become a forgotten name, a ghost of power that once ruled the city. But not for Lena. Every morning, before opening the factory, she looked at her father's name carved in stone and thought of Adrian's promise. He deserved to be remembered. And every night, when she walked home, she would glance up at the sky, wondering where he was. Sometimes she told herself she didn't care anymore. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rolled over the city, Lena received a letter at her office. It was old-fashioned, thick cream paper, handwritten, sealed with wax. There was no sender's name, only an address from a distant coastal town she didn't recognize. Her heart skipped. She opened it with trembling hands. "Lena, if this reaches you, it means I finally found what I was looking for. Peace. I've been living by the sea, fixing boats and mending nets. It's quiet here, sometimes too quiet, but it gives me time to think, to feel. I've learned that life isn't about what you own. It's about what you can still give when you've lost everything. I don't expect you to write back. I just wanted you to know that the factory is thriving. I've heard about it. You made it a place of hope. I couldn't have done that. Only you could. I'm proud of you." Lena's hands shook as she read it. The words felt alive, warm, almost close enough to touch. She sank into her chair, heart racing. He was alive. He was safe. But before the relief could settle, something else caught her eye, a small note written at the bottom of the letter. P.S. The sea here reminds me of you. Always calm on the surface, but full of storms beneath. For days, Lena couldn't focus on anything. She kept rereading the letter like it was a secret map. Her mind whispered questions she didn't want to ask out loud. Should she go see him? Would he even want her there? What if he had moved on? Eli noticed her distraction. One night, as they ate dinner, he asked, "You got another letter from him, didn't you?" She looked up, startled. "How do you—" He smiled. You've been staring at the window every night again. That's your giveaway, Lena sighed. It's not what you think. Then what is it? I don't know, she whispered. Maybe it's closure. Maybe it's something else. Eli leaned back. Lena, you always told me to face things instead of running from them. Maybe it's your turn to do that. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded softly. Maybe you're right. A week later, Lena packed a small bag and boarded a train heading toward the coast. The journey was long and quiet. The city's grey buildings slowly gave way to open fields, then small villages, and finally, the endless shimmer of the sea. When the train stopped, she stepped out into the salty air. The wind smelled like freedom. She followed the address from the letter until she reached a small harbour town. Boats rocked gently in the water, and fishermen shouted across the docks. She asked a local shopkeeper, "Do you know a man named Adrian?" "He fixes boats, I think," the woman smiled. "Ah, you mean Mr. A? Yes, he's down by the pier, always working, never talking much. Kind man, though. Saved my son's boat once." Lena's heart pounded. She thanked her and hurried toward the pier. There he was. Adrian stood by a half-repaired boat, sleeves rolled up, hands covered in grease and salt. His hair was longer now, his face tanned and rough, but there was peace in his movements. For a moment she just watched him. The sound of waves and the cry of seagulls filled the silence. The morning air was cold, crisp and alive with the smell of the sea. Lena woke early, her heart racing with a strange mix of excitement and fear. She dressed quickly, brushed her hair and looked at her reflection in the small mirror. For the first time in years, she smiled without forcing it. She walked down to the harbour where the fishermen were already at work. The sun was climbing above the horizon, spilling gold across the waves. And there, at the far end of the pier, stood Adrian. He was fixing a small wooden boat, his hands moving calmly, his face lit by the morning light. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. Their eyes met, and for a second everything else faded away. The noise, the years, the pain. "Good morning," she said softly. He smiled, wiping his hands on a rag. "That you came." "I said I would," she replied. He nodded. "I didn't think you'd—" "Really mean it. I always mean what I say," she said with a teasing smile. He laughed quietly. Sounds so natural it made her heart ache. They spent the morning walking. Along the beach, Adrian told her about the small town, how he repaired boats for the locals, how he'd built a life without money or fame. Lena listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes lost in thought. She told him about the factory, the new programs for young workers, the scholarship fund she started in her father's name. Every time she spoke, Adrian looked at her like she was the only thing keeping the world steady. At one point she said, "It's strange. For years I blamed you for everything. But maybe all of it had to happen. Maybe it led us here." He stopped walking. "Do you really believe that?" She looked at him. "Yes, because if we hadn't broken each other, we would have never learned how to heal." As the day faded into evening, they sat by the rocks watching the sunset. The sky burned orange and purple, the waves crashing gently against the shore. Adrian glanced at her and said quietly, "You know, I thought I'd never see you again. I made peace with that. But now that you're here, I don't know what to do with the feeling." Lena smiled softly. "You don't have to do anything. Just be here." He nodded slowly. "That's new for me, just being." She laughed gently. "Then consider it your next lesson." For a long while they sat in silence. Then Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "What's that?" she asked. He handed it to her. "Something I wrote the night before I left the city. I never thought I'd show it to anyone." Lena unfolded it carefully. It was another letter, written in the same handwriting she knew so well. "If one day I ever see her again, I won't ask for forgiveness. I'll just ask for one evening, to sit beside her as the sun sets and know that she's at peace." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "You got your evening?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I did." The night came quietly. The stars appeared one by one, bright and endless. They walked back to the dock where his small house stood, the lantern outside swaying in the wind. "Do you ever miss it?" Lena asked. "The city, the power, the life you had?" Adrian thought for a moment, then shook his head. "I miss the people I could have been good to, but not the man I was." She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're good now." He turned to her, eyes soft and searching. "Because of you." Lena's breath caught. "No, Adrian. You did that on your own. He took a slow step toward her. Maybe. But you were the reason I wanted to try. She looked down, her heart beating fast. And what now? He smiled gently. Now we see what happens when two broken hearts stop running. Later that night, they sat outside on a wooden bench under the stars. The waves whispered against the shore. Adrian looked up and said quietly, "When I first met you, I thought I could buy love. I thought everything had a price. But you—" He paused. "You taught me the one thing that can't be bought is forgiveness." Lena's eyes shimmered. "And you taught me something too." "What's that?" "That even the people we think are impossible to forgive can still change." He smiled. "Maybe we both learned the same lesson in different ways." A shooting star streaked across the sky. Lena gasped softly. "Make a wish," she whispered. Adrian closed his eyes. "Already did. What did you wish for?" He opened his eyes, smiling. "This right now." She felt tears prick her eyes. "You and your dramatic answers," she said with a shaky laugh. He laughed too, then grew quiet. "Lena, I don't know what comes next. I don't even know if I deserve a second chance. But if there's even a small place for me in your world, I'd like to be in it." Her voice trembled. "I think there always was." For a long time, neither moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly, Lena reached out and took his hand. It was rough, warm, real. Adrian looked down at their joined hands, then back at her. "Does this mean—" She smiled. "It means we stop running from the past. And maybe start walking toward something new." The waves rolled against the dock, steady and endless. The stars shimmered above them, reflected in the quiet sea. For the first time, neither of them felt broken. They didn't need promises of forever, or fancy words, or grand gestures. Just this. The peace of two hearts finally learning how to beat in the same rhythm. As the night deepened, Adrian whispered, "You know, when I lost everything, I thought my story was over." Lena leaned her head gently on his shoulder. "Maybe it just changed chapters," he smiled softly. "Then this one's my favorite." The sea breeze carried their laughter into the night. The once proud billionaire and the waitress who had once hated him sat beneath the stars, finally at peace with the world and with each other. Somewhere far away, the city lights flickered like old memories. But neither of them looked back anymore, because sometimes love doesn't come from the life you planned. It comes from the one that's left after everything else falls apart. And under the endless sky, their story, once filled with pain, pride, and loss, finally found its quiet ending, a beginning disguised as goodbye.